Welcome back to the Tournament Center. I'm Randy Buehler here with Brian David Marshall.
Hey.
We just finished watching the third draft of Pro Tour-Geneva. 6 rounds in the books. We know who's advancing to day 2, and so day 2 sort of starts Friday evening. They drafted these decks. They're going to play 1 round tonight, then they'll play the last 2 rounds tomorrow. One of the things that means is we can't really talk about exactly the decks we watch these guys draft.
Man, does that suck. Because
listen to me, we watched table 1.
I have such an exciting first pick in this book. I could not.
Tomorrow. We'll tell the
can't
story
now.
tomorrow
I can't.
morning.
Oh,
Tomorrow morning we'll tell the story.
Honestly, it's
worth
really
waiting
good.
for.
It's really good.
Pretty interesting. What we thought we would do, though, is we've watched these pros draft Planar Chaos 3 times now. You know, Time Spiral, pretty much everyone had their pick orders down, but what does Planar Chaos do to the format? I think that's what a lot of us want to know. That's
Sure.
what I'm trying to get out of this. We got to do a draft tonight after we finish.
Absolutely.
So we thought we'd walk you through what we've learned about Planar Chaos. We're going to go through the colors and sort of talk about what the top commons are. That's really what, you know, draft comes down to. I mean, the rares and the uncommons are obviously very important, but you can't count on them. So it's really the commons that people build their strategies around.
I thought you made a great point earlier in the day when we were talking about Rich Hone's draft, and you talked about why Rich was trying to force red-blue.
Yeah, it's where the best commons are.
The best commons were there. And that's,
right.
I mean, I have a long-standing thing where I always talk about taking, you know, Glacial Ray over Dragon, or, you know, and getting consistent decks, because you can also build your decks around commons.
Right.
You can't build decks and sort of have them mentally filed away for future use around rares. It's a lot harder. So
let's
commons
look
are the
at the colors.
blocks.
We'll start with white. I think these are the big 2 people are looking for. Sunlance, you've got a removal spell sitting in a white weenie color. Shade of Trocaire, pretty powerful man. Can suspend it out there on the first turn, can hit pretty hard.
You suspend him on the first turn, and then unlike shades of previous blocks, he comes into play with all your mana untapped. So that's
True.
really exciting. That's what makes this guy so powerful.
Okay.
It's not like you have to pay 4 mana for the guy, and then you have a 1/2, and they have this window to kill him with any random removal spell.
Right.
If you're a heavy white deck, he comes into play maybe 3 white untapped, and he's really, really difficult to kill, and you can just go on offense with him and really put your opponent back on their heels.
Right, and Sunlance pretty much speaks for itself.
Yes.
One card that's not up here that I heard a lot of people talking about, though, is White Mane Lion. It seems like a card that people are saying, oh, look at all the crazy, amazing things you can do with White Mane Lion, and then it's time to draft and it's time to play, and it's not actually the card people are drafting.
When it came down to brass tacks,
yeah,
people looked at their 2-drop. They'd be done with the first 2 packs. They're like, I don't have enough 2-drops. And you get White Mane Lion, and he's just not a 2-drop.
Right.
You want your 2-drop to stick on the board. He has things he has to do. He has to get in the way. Right. He has to tussle. And White Mane Lion's not really good at that. He's very tricky.
So Sinew Sliver is a much better pick there.
Card I saw going up in just what we're talking about white commons is Saltfield Recluse.
Really?
He's a 1/2 rebel for 3 mana, and he taps to give guys -2/-0. I saw Frank Karsten kill like 4 guys in a series of 2 turns with it. He had a Dwarven Thaumaturgist out.
Oh, well, sure.
So, you know, give your ghost
Wilder combos with Thaumaturgist too?
I do
That's
know that.
Awesome.
I do very well know that.
Anyway.
Would block, you know, damage on the stack
Sure.
at the end of turn, Thaumaturgist your guy. It was very exciting.
Let's look at blue. I think this is one of the biggest stories of Planar Chaos, by the way. It just, you can't think about this enough. Blue is a removal color.
Right.
Like, all of a sudden, blue is a removal color. Its 2 best commons are both creature kill.
And arguably, there's a 3rd common creature kill, which is Piracy Charm.
Sure.
You know, it's hand destruction. It's creature kill. It's murder against other blue mages because it gives the island walk.
Right.
So,
you know, that shape-shifting theme. Blue's all about shape-shifting, and apparently shape-shifting, well, you know, that's how you kill people in this world.
Yeah.
So just a huge change. You know, you see people, you know, white weenie decks, and instead of splashing red, they're splashing blue. That's where the removal's coming from.
Absolutely. It's funny. I've been in drafts where I felt like I was set up to have blue, and, you know, the green deck was just taking blue, where they would like normally have had a lightning axe or had a temporal isolation or just splash some removal. They're like, I'll splash this Shape of Parasite.
Right.
And
So we'll talk about black next. And black, okay, here's your best commons. You got a Wrathy Trapper, you got a Blight Speaker that can get it out.
The commons in black are very thin, and this is where the wrap comes. Like Cradle to Grave is a common, but it's kind of a very shady remove soul.
Right.
You know, it is essentially a remove soul, but you still get all your come into play abilities. You still get all your triggers, and so it's
black in this format. It's really all about the gambit. Like, if you think that everyone knows black's awful, maybe you move in, right? Maybe you first pick that Tendrils or, you know, a Thysis or something and see what happens and move in. If nobody else moves in and you're the only black mage, it's actually awesome.
Right. And
if you're competing for it, though, you know, this is it. There's not much left.
But if you get these cards, like Blightspeaker's a Rebel Searcher, you can fill out a Rebel Chain, and it searches out your Wrathy Trapper.
It's still the worst color.
It's
all about the gambit. I mean, that's the story behind black. Moving on to the next color, you know, red is the nuts. Red is the best color in this format. It's got the best commons, and it's been kind of an interesting debate, though, which in fact is the best common. Sting Scourger was getting a lot of press from a lot of people coming into the tournament.
Sting Scourger turned out to be the great red hype. Right, like it's definitely come down quite a bit, and we've even heard Rich Hone and Osip Lobodovich and a couple other people putting the Pyromancer Tom in front of it.
Sure. Dead Gone, almost the consensus number one pick now?
Consensus number one pick.
Best common in the set?
A couple people have actually put Tom ahead of it.
Interesting.
I've heard more than a couple people say that the Tim Tom, whatever we want to call him, is the top red common, but I think most people agree that it's Dead Gone.
Fair enough.
For reasons we've mentioned earlier, it kills something or it bounces something. You know, it's just efficient removal, or it's just really good tempo, and it's just great. It does everything you want it to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that analyzing the colors is really ultimately all about commons, but if you go to the next slide, you know, red's got some ridiculous uncommons and rares too. I mean, when you get enough of them in one color, it kind of adds up to something that really can affect your strategy. You know, Pyrohemia is uncommon, Torchling sitting there at rare. You know, there's just all these awesome uncommons and rares.
We were talking about black being one of the things about black. Black has a lot of really exciting uncommons. Going back for a second, uncommons and rares. And I had an interesting question. One of the players asked me after the draft. People were going to their tables. He said, "Torchling or Enslave?" You know, and it's like that's where the real riches in black lie. Like, he's like, oh,
yeah, it's hard to go wrong. With
and Enslave over Torchling was the pick. So.
Nice. So we'll go to green. I think green looks awesome on paper, but I mean, I can't tell what the players actually think of it, right? You get flyers, 3/3 flyer for 5 in green. It's like green was awesome.
By the way, this card doesn't have suspend.
Yeah, that's a joke. It's like a skill tester.
It's a skill tester.
Just run it out there. 3/3 flyer for 5 is plenty good enough. Mire Boa, what more could you ask from a 2-drop? Regeneration, Swamp Walk, 2 power. It does everything.
I found Mire Boa to be killable, like somehow more killable than River Boa was.
There's a lot of -1 toughness in this format.
But
it's still these. Green goes from having all this awesome stuff in time spiral, and then suddenly it picks up flying and card drawing.
It should just lots of card drawing. Sentinel Wood Readers is card drawing. You know, you have Harmonize, which is at uncommon, obviously, but is clearly one of the best, most back-breaking cards in the set. You know, you guys trade, you get to parity, and then it's just like draw 3 cards. Like Blue would draw 3 cards, and you know, with Concentrate, and obviously it was backbreaking, but you know, you still felt like you had a chance because Blue is always just traditionally clawing.
It's going to take a while to kill you with
clawing back from the brink of death. You know, and they're like, oh, Concentrate. They have to take a turn out to Concentrate.
No, but green comes out with the 2/2s.
It swings. Green empties its hand with guys, and then refills, and you're like, oh.
And I like the 3/3 guy that kicks to a 6/6 haste.
Oh, that guy
fills out the curve. He sits in the 3 spot, but if you draw him late, he's awesome.
Same thing with the Wood Readers. Like the Wood Readers is just this great card. You can play the guy just as a Horn Turtle. Right? You know, you can just play him and you can just block up the ground.
Here's the thing, though. Why are we the only ones talking about this? Have you heard anybody saying how awesome green is?
I've heard a couple people talking about how awesome
Not
green
very
is.
many. I haven't, anyway. It seems like it should be awesome, and yet everyone's talking about red, and everyone's forcing red or forcing blue.
Right. Red and blue are just the deepest. There's a latent resentment to green in the pro community. They just haven't fully. I believe they're drafting green on the down low.
All right. Just keeping it a little quiet.
They're not really telling anyone about it. They don't tell their friends.
I'll buy that. If you go to the next slide. Utopia Vow, very controversial card.
This is an interesting card. A lot of players don't like this card. I'm not a huge fan of this card. I always feel like every time I play it, something terrible happens to me.
They tap for mana.
Remember we were talking about the Lightning Axes and the erratic mutations and the Shape of Parasites that people are splashing. Well, I felt like, certainly when I was playing with the card and playtesting, I'd play the card on their creature, slow down their tempo, try to get in, and then suddenly I've turned on their removal that's been stranded in their hand.
Right.
A worst case situation, I saw someone get their creature Utopia Vowed, out comes a Scrib Ranger, pick up a forest, untap my guy, tap my guy, Torchling go, from nowhere. Oops. But when talking to Quentin Martin, talking to Richard Hone, and these guys were like, This card's, Quentin Martin.
Rich and Quentin say it's good?
They said it was good.
Never mind.
Quentin was,
I guess it's good then.
Quentin was beaming at a deck with 3 of them in it.
Wow.
He's just like, how could I lose? I've got 3 pacifisms. He doesn't care if he gives you mana. So
this is probably the single card that has the most widely divergent opinions on it.
Absolutely.
So.
I mean, there are definitely people who find it to be unplayable. There are people who find it to be sideboardable. There's people who find it to be, I like to have one in my deck just in case.
And if Quentin says
and then there's people who just like,
interesting.
First pick it. It's pacifism.
There's really a 6th color in Planar Chaos. It's the slivers.
Yeah.
I mean, it almost behaves like you've got your Sinew slivers, you got your Synchronous sliver. Whatever you're in, there's some new slivers for you to play with, some new toys.
And if you stumble into the right colors, you're red-white, and you pick up a Sinew sliver, you might get a Cautery sliver really late in the uncommon slot. Your black-white slivers, Necrotic sliver comes really late. Vindicate sliver, as most people just call him.
Sure. I mean, if you're red-blue, the Frenetic sliver is just fine.
Frenetic sliver is fantastic.
And Synchronous sliver does some crazy things. You get that going with like a Telekinetic sliver.
Or a Psionic sliver.
Good times.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, finish this up. You're drafting Planar Chaos. We've talked about the commons. We've run through sort of what the best commons are, but to round things up, I know we keep flipping back to the player's guide, looking through this thing. Everybody's seems like a bunch of people have one of these, trying to understand what else here.
Players are buying fat packs this weekend.
Just to get these?
Just to get that.
It's funny. All right. Best rare in the set, not called Damnation.
Boy, I got to tell you, I think I might say Krovax.
Interesting.
Krovax Ascendant Hero.
He's pretty ridiculous.
If Krovax Ascendant Hero was only a 4/4 for 6 with, which gave -1/-1 to non-white creatures and +1/+1 to white creatures,
yep,
he'd be ridiculous.
Okay.
But the fact that you just can't kill him is absurd. You pay 2 life to return him to your hand. It doesn't cost mana to activate. It's just, the card is an absolute bomb. He's a little smaller than a dragon, but you get a lot more mileage out of him. And
it's only one color.
And it's only one color. He always hits.
I think I'm going to cheat. If you tell me what card do I get to start to build my draft around, I want Pyrrhemia. It's only uncommon, but the red
feels rare to me.
Pestilence.
I have actually not seen one in a draft I've been in, but
well, you won't see one if I open
people
it.
were talking about Pyrrhemia Stuffy Doll last night.
That's good times. Well,
but if you have to pick a rare,
if I have to pick a rare,
an actual rare,
Deadwood Tree Folk's pretty good.
That's also an uncommon.
Ah, you got me. You took mine. I was going to say Krovax. I mean, if you can play a dragon, the dragons are obviously awesome. But I mean, there's just a ton of good cards.
There's a ton of great cards. Everyone has lots of cards to play with. Everyone's able to build a deck. There's not those really dreaded 22nd, 23rd cards in people's decks.
You still definitely see the depth of the format. I mean, that's something that was a real change from the development team to put this set together, trying to say, you know what, let's give people 30 cards and let them figure out
there's definitely
which
more of
5 cards go in the sideboard and which to bring in a game 2 against that opponent.
There's definitely more of a constructed feel to the format. You see people really, again, we talked about it.
I mean, it's constructed
coming
in the sense that you get to fine-tune and you have these decisions to make to customize your deck.
But you make decisions based on the synergy of your deck, but you're not, whereas opposed to, there's been some past draft formats where you didn't really have that luxury to say, what type of red-white deck do I want to have?
Right.
What color would I like to pair my black with? How many colors of green do I want to play? You just sort of took what you got, and you were happy to get it. And you walked uphill 5 miles in the snow barefoot.
With 22 playables.
With 22 playables and 18 lands. And you were happy about it.
Well, that's Planar Chaos in a nutshell. That's a walk through what the best commons are, a hint at what the pros are doing. We've got 1 round left today. We'll bring you a daily wrap-up in a little bit.
Right.
8 rounds tomorrow, and then we'll find out who's going to be playing on Sunday for the Pro Tour Geneva Championship title and $40,000.
And the lead in the Pro Player of the Year race.
We will be back with more coverage from the Tournament Center. For Brian David Marshall, this is Randy Bueller.
Good. Cut.